Gary Jackson joins forces with Jake Dirden for a tag team affair today on SICW Wrestling Explosion. Hello, this is Larry Matisick. As powerful a combination as Jackson and Dirden appear to be, they have their hands full in this duel. The opponents, rough and tough Axe, clever and mean Flash Flanagan. Dirden and Jackson versus Flanagan and Axe. In addition, I have a terrific interview with Ted DiBiase, who became the $1 Million Man after he was a star in St. Louis. And then a classic with King Kong Brody. Tag team action follows these important messages. Gary Jackson starts the action for his side. It's Gary Jackson and Jake Dirden against Axe and Flash Flanagan. Good tag team battle here. Some big names, some people who've earned main events everywhere in the Midwest. Gary squaring off with Axe. Axe misses a chance to lock up. He's frustrated. Gary just playing with his mind a little bit. Takes a look over at Flash Flanagan. Flanagan yells at him, "Come on, Jackson, hook up." Let's see what happens here again. Jake Dirden and Flanagan yell at each other. They've had a couple of battles with each other. Jake Dirden and Flash Flanagan. Flanagan calls himself the uncrowned champion in SICW. You know he wants a crack at that SICW crown, the classic championship. Flanagan says, pop him in the face, he'll slow down. Jackson locks up with Axe. Side headlock by Axe on Gary Jackson. Squeezing that head, squeezing the head of Gary. Jake Dirden yelling, trying to stir the crowd up a little bit on Gary's behalf. Gary reaching inside the side headlock, tried to twist out with a wrist lock. Didn't make it. Axe a little bit too strong, a little bit too much leverage. Off the ropes comes Axe. Flying tackle. Duck underneath by Jackson. Leapfrog by the Night Train. Hip toss by Night Train Gary Jackson. Axe says, oh, I'll stay in the corner where Flash Flanagan is for a moment here while I check and see how many of my vertebrae are out of position after that hip toss by Gary Jackson. Nice leapfrog by Gary. The crowd chants. Listen to him. Gary, Gary, Gary. Gary Jackson's earned that recognition. He's somebody who's been around the block a couple times. He's paid his dues and he's come out on top more often than not. Always a leading contender, always a main event performer. Arm drag by Jackson on Axe. Axe thought he'd land a flying tackle. Didn't work, did it? Knee dropped into the shoulder, into the bicep of Axe by Gary Jackson. Twist that arm again and says, how about a piece of this for Jake Dirden? Let's see if Jake can do that. Look how they're bending the elbow of Axe. Headbutt, oh, headbutt into the bicep by Jake Dirden. That's a new way to work off the arm twist armbar combination. Forearm smash by Jake Dirden. Colorful, explosive Jake Dirden. Whip to the ropes and a big boot. That brings, well, it doesn't bring Flash Flanagan into the ring. Well, he thought about coming into the ring, but he saw that big boot looming in front of his face, and he said, well, I'll wait it out a little bit. Axe, checking if his nose is still on. Punch by Jake Dirden. Referee warns him, keep the hand open. Jake says, my mistake, my mistake. I know they're going to break the rules, so it's a preemptive strike. Isn't that what they call it? Nuclear missiles, a preemptive strike? Grant Murphy says, I don't know. I don't do that stuff. Grant Murphy takes fake pictures for us, man. Where would we be without Grant? Some of the work he's done, some beautiful work. Actually, some of the work that he's done and that we put together for the Iowa Hall of Fame, the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, Dan Gable Museum, was done by Grant Murphy, putting together some of the stars of the Hall of Fame who were in the Hall of Fame and that wrestled in St. Louis, some of the famous names from O'Connor to Thez. Grant did that, and a lot of people love the work he did on that tape. Headbutt by Dirden on Flash Flanagan. Another headbutt on Axe, and this sellout crowd packed to the top at SICW Stadium. Boy, they're here. They love it. They like this action. They like this match, and they come out in droves. The SICW crowd alive and full of energy. Body slam by Gary Jackson. Axe isn't so full of energy after that body slam, but the elbow drop misses. Axe rolled away, and he says, let's let Flash Flanagan have a crack at Gary Jackson. Flash, he's going to ram the head of Gary Jackson into the turnbuckle. Gary blocked it with a boot, and then throws a blow to the stomach, and then he bounces Flash Flanagan's head off that top turnbuckle. Flash turned into the corner. Arm whip. Ooh! Gary charged right in behind it. two hard blows both ways there, but at the end it was Flash Flanagan who got a little bit the better of the exchange, and now Flanagan puts the boots. Gary Jackson runs over and he punches. Jake Dirden knocks him off the apron. Flash Flanagan playing with fire. Here comes Dirden. Or was he? The referee trying to get Dirden back into the corner, and Axe and Flash Flanagan double-teamed Gary Jackson. Did a false tag. You'd hear see Flash slap his hands together, so referee Keith Smith Jr. thought there was a tag. Axe in the ring on Gary Jackson. He's on top right now. Hooks the head. Here comes the tag to Flash Flanagan. And now Flanagan and Axe begin trading those tags quickly. That's very important in tag team wrestling. If you can make quick tags, keep a fresh man in the ring. Gary Jackson's been in there for a while now. Durden hasn't had that much time in the ring. It's Gary who's been in there expending a lot of energy, and he's trapped in the corner for Flash Flanagan and Axe. The crowd begins chanting for Gary. They want Gary to explode. They want him to explode on Flash Flanagan if he has a choice. Oh, Gary, so strong. Look at him pushing his way across the ring. Look at that. Look at the power. Oh, how many squats has he done weightlifting? He's in there and he tags Jake Durden. Flanagan yells, Durden, oh, referee didn't see it. He's keeping Axe out of the ring, and he didn't realize that a tag had been made to Durden. Gary still trapped in the ring, and Axe standing on his throat. Keith Smith Jr., not his fault. He's trying to keep peace, and the referee can't see everything all the time. Flash Flanagan, a smart cookie. He outsmarted the referee and Durden and Jackson that time. Flash looks pretty cocky about it, doesn't he? As Axe works with a chin clamp, pulling back on the chin over his knee. Gary needs to get off that knee, and he does. Gary's so strong. Just a strong body. Oh, a chin jolt, a jawbreaker by Gary Jackson using his head against the jaw of Axe, but they put Axe in a position where he could tag Flash Flanagan. Flanagan slaps Durden again. The referee tries to keep Durden back. Here's Axe in the ring. The two men double team Gary Jackson. They miss. Gary doesn't. Flying shoulder block. Down go Axe and Flash. Compliments of Gary Jackson. Tag made. Here comes Durden. Durden after Axe. After Flash. Headbutt. Jake Durden taking command in the ring. He's got a lot of fire right now and a lot of energy. He tries to bounce the heads of Axe and Flash together. They got shoulders up, but that means they still ram their shoulders. That didn't feel too good either. Tag made to Gary Jackson. Jackson, the legal man with Flash Flanagan right now, but we have all four men in the ring. All four wrestlers in there. Arm whip, whoop, it's reversed, and oh, Axe runs into Gary Jackson. Everything went wrong there. The kendo stick by Flash Flanagan. He puts Durden down, and Gary Jackson goes behind Flash. And Gary Jackson pins Flash Flanagan. The schoolboy roll-up, the cradle, the back cradle by Gary Jackson. Flanagan tried to pull something illegal on Durden, hit him with the kendo stick. He was going to follow up, and Gary Jackson saw an opening. Gary hooked Flash Flanagan. That's why Gary Jackson is a favorite of this SICW crowd. Gary Jackson with a pin on Flanagan. That means Jake Durden and Night Train Gary Jackson are the winners. I feel like I've done this interview before. And you know what? I probably have at Wrestling at the Chase. Ted DiBiase here to join us. Okay, here's the first big question. Think back to when you first came to St. Louis. It was like 1978. We had your name written down, and Mickey Garagiola told me, I said, I wonder how he pronounces that name. Is it DiBiase or just DiBiase? And Mickey says, I'm from the Hill. If the last name's a vowel, it's a silent letter. So it's DiBiase. Well, which is it, Ted?
Well, here's the thing.
I ask all the tough questions.
I was, I grew up being called DiBiase. Now, the Italians would drop the vowel, and DiBiase. The real old Italians, some of them would even drop the front, and they would say, yeah, he's a Biaz. So people, I get that question all the time because that's the way you announced me. Ted DiBiase, and so is it DiBiase or DiBiase? I said I answered it either. Actually, it gets screwed up all the time. I've been called DiBiase.
Hey, as long as you understand, it wasn't my fault. It was Mickey Garagiola's fault. Yeah. Of course, Mickey Garagiola did something else too. Ted, when you got to be.
Oh, he made me world champion.
Made you world champion. Tell the story, because we had Ted was the hottest young talent in the world. We had a tag match in wrestling at the Chase. It was Ted DiBiase and Paul Orndorff against Bulldog Bob Brown and Harley Race when Harley had the World Heavyweight title. Ted gets the pin, tell the story.
Yeah, I get the hot tag and boom, 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 and I pin Harley, you know, and it's like, I mean, Harley's the world champion, and you never saw the world champion ever, whether it was in a single or a tag match, especially on television, ever get beat. And it was a tag match, and so boom, Harley's shoulders go down, 1, 2, 3, and Mickey screams, "We've got a new world champion! We've got a new world champion! Ted DiBiase is the new world champion!" And then, you know, somebody had to correct him. So it's a tag team match. You know, you can't lose the title. But that was the setup for the first major main event of my life.
That was a sellout at Kiel Auditorium, you and Harley.
That's right. The first, I mean, and I tell people that all the time, you know, St. Louis wrestling was the launching pad for me in a lot of ways. I know that the first time that I went to New York, which was in '79, it was because of a conversation that Vince McMahon Sr. had with Sam Mushnick.
Correct. I remember the phone call. I was sitting there listening.
Yeah, and you know, Sam, you know, put me over real strong, and next thing I know, I'm on my way to New York, and Vince Sr. brought me in. He said, we've only ever had our world champion, our world tag team champions, and our ladies world champion. He says, we've never had any other title, and we're going to bring you in as the North American heavyweight champion. And so they did, and I wrestled as the North American champion for a while. And I thought, well, you know, it's New York, you know, it's not that big a deal. But I just happened to mention one day to Vince Sr. that Bill Watts' champion down in Mid-South was also called the North American champion.
First time I've heard this part of the story.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, go on.
So he goes, really? And he said, I didn't know that. And of course, I mean, it was back in the days of regional wrestling. I mean, you could wrestle in Florida for 2 years and nobody'd know you if you went to, you know, Georgia, because it was regional. But that wasn't true if you went to St. Louis. But anyway, back to that story. So Pat Patterson comes in, and you know, Pat's an established. Oh my gosh, you know, he's an established star, and so I'm the young guy, and I drop the North American title to Pat Patterson on television to set him up for a run with Bob Backlund. So he becomes the North American champion, and they just make up a story. You know, Pat Patterson goes off to Rio de Janeiro, and you know, all these champions from around the world relinquish their titles, basically, and whoever wins this tournament comes out the Intercontinental Champion. And so Pat has always been given credit as being the first Intercontinental Champion. And I guess technically speaking, he was the first Intercontinental Champion, but I was the first guy that was ever brought in there with a championship other than their recognized titles.
You know, Ted, over the years, you've been everywhere. When you started out, and a lot of people still remember you, of course, as the $1 Million Man, and that's where you got your national fame. But I think they often overlook the difference in the tremendous versatility that you had, because when you were wrestling throughout the South, throughout the Midwest, you had to be one of the greatest good guys, baby faces, call whatever you want there ever was. You didn't have to beg the crowd to cheer. I still remember that. I remember you and I talking about it once before a match at the Checker Dome, and we expected 20,000 people. You never had to even give them a sign. You never had to wave or anything. How'd you do it, or was it just a different business at that time?
It was a different business, and it was what I was taught. And I'll go back to the first angle, the first major angle that I ever did with an established star was with Killer Carl Cox, working for Bill Watts at Mid-South. And I remember that at one point in a TV match, he's beating the fire out of me and everything, and so we finally do something, kind of like what we would call the hope spot, and Carl's down on his knees in the corner, and he's begging off, and I'm looking at him like this, and I turned to the crowd like that, like, should I hit him? He hit me so hard in the gut, bent me over, knocked the wind out of me, took me back to the mat, and he said, And he said, and that's exactly what would happen to you if you ever took your eyes off of an opponent in a fight. He said, would you take your eyes off of a guy that had been beating you up for 10 minutes if you had a chance to get on top of me? I said, no. And he said, that's just it. It's a work, but you did it as realistically as you possibly can. And I tell young guys that today all the time. You know, all that stuff about stomping your feet and get the crowd going. If they believe what you're doing, they're going to come. You're going to get them. You just got to wait.
And they'll come.
And they will.
What was more fun, being the $1 Million Man or being the good guy wrestling Harley Race at the Checker Dome in front of 20,000 people?
You know, that's a tough call. I mean, you know,
what paid the most money? Oh, well, never mind. Okay.
Well, up until that time, the payoff at the Keel for wrestling Harley Race was at the time the single largest payoff I'd ever had in my life. And you know what's funny, Larry? I was somewhere just a few weeks ago, and I can't remember the guy's name now that I worked for. They're out of that New England group.
Yeah, Sheldon Goldberg.
Those guys, they had the ledger.
That ended up getting out because after everything happened in St. Louis, a lot of the paperwork got lost.
Well, I'm looking at the book. I'm looking at the actual book.
And seeing your payoff.
And the payoffs, and I was like, you know what? You know, I mean, it was black and white. You know, I mean, if you were in the main event at the Keel, whether it was world champion or whatever, you were going to get paid right. And I always did. I mean, and Sam had that reputation.
And let's go back to Sam a quick second here, because something we've done at SICW with promoter Herb Simmons is try to somehow keep that wrestling at the Chase tradition as much as you can today. A little bit alive. Having a Ted DiBiase come in to visit with us, something like that is special to us, it's special to our fans. What was it about Sam Muchnick? What was it about St. Louis? You can condense it into a few paragraphs. What made it different? What made it work?
Well, I mean, Sam had integrity. I mean, there it is. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, and I speak to guys all the time as a minister, you know, and I said we live in a culture where men think their masculinity is based on the size of their biceps and how much beer they can drink, and I said the size of a man is the strength of his character, you know, and his integrity, and if Sam Muchnick gave you his word, you could take it to the bank. I mean, and nobody said any different. And if he told you he was going to do something, he did it, you know. And so, and amongst promoters, you know, in any, whether it was wrestling, you know, promoters are not known to be likable guys, or like, you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
So, you know, but Sam had that. He had that reputation, and so did you know, the guy down in Houston, Paul Bosch, was another guy who was.
There were a few scattered around that were in that Sam mold, and that's what made it special. Ted, thank you for coming again.
My pleasure.
We could talk forever.
Yeah, we could.
And let me tell you something. When you talk about people that you have special memories of, I have many special memories of this guy, and I'm sure you do too. Thank you so much, Ted DiBiase.
My pleasure.
The flying tackle, and Volkoff stands his ground.
Before he went to the WWE, Nikolai Volkoff was one mean competitor, but so was King Kong Brody. It's a St. Louis classic memory from August 20th, 1983, Nikolai Volkoff against King Kong Brody.
King Kong Brody trying to squeeze that head of Volkoff. Control the head, control the body. There's a lot of body on Volkoff to control. It's hard to ever remember seeing Brody slam. Volkoff has the power not only to slam him, but to deliver that backbreaker. Volkoff leans into Brody. Brody pushing to the corner. Volkoff with a headbutt into this midsection. Brody and Volkoff exchanging kicks, now forearms, and Brody gouges the eyes. It's not going to be a Sunday school picnic in there. Oh, Volkoff all over Brody. Volkoff pounding on King Kong Brody. Nikolai Volkoff. Brody reverses the whip. Volkoff hits the corner. Brody charges it and misses. Oh, Volkoff, very agile for somebody who weighs 320 pounds. He's agile for somebody who weighs 230. He got out of the way, and Brody again getting into trouble with Volkoff. And I think a lot of the people here in the Checkerdome Sports Studio right now are a little bit surprised. Hey, Volkoff's knocking Brody around pretty good.
He's not backing away, I'll tell you that.
He's going right into taking the battle to Brody. Volkoff all over Brody. And all those people who are so tied into what King Kong Brody does, so much enthusiastic and emotional about King Kong Brody, I think they're feeling now that their man has met somebody who can go with him blow for blow. Brody fighting back against Volkoff. Chopped to the throat by Brody. Volkoff just won't back up. Like two tanks coming head on into one another. Volkoff pitches Brody out of the ring. A kick to the head. Brody crawls onto the apron. Another kick from Nikolai Volkoff to King Kong Brody. Brody grabs the leg of Volkoff. Volkoff and Brody out on the floor. Volkoff. Brody grabs him. Uh-oh, look out. Volkoff and Brody on the spectators. Volkoff tried to run Brody. Rather, it was Brody trying to run Volkoff. Uh-oh, Brody has a chair. He's going after Volkoff. He misses with that chair. The referee's still counting. Brody and Volkoff toe-to-toe, head-to-head. Volkoff going after the chair. Brody grabs Volkoff. The referee calling for the bell. Sure, both men are counted off. We still have a Donnybrook going here. Brody grabs the chair. Brody going after Volkoff and misses. Volkoff and Brody. A Donnybrook has erupted here. I mean, a Donnybrook, a back alley brawl between Brody and Volkoff. I'm sure the referee counted both men out of the ring. Lee Warren doing yeoman service, restoring order, getting that chair which is already bent. We have them separated now. I'm sure the official verdict is both men counted out. Let's hear it from Mickey Garagiola.
Both wrestlers in 4 minutes and 53 seconds, both wrestlers have been disqualified.
Lee Warren and Chuck Riley from the Office of Athletics. They're trying to run Brody back.
For all the wild, wide-open brawling that happened, it was a quick wrestling move by Gary Jackson that brought a triumph to Jackson and Jake Dirden in today's feature. Don't expect Axe, and especially Flash Flanagan, who was pinned by Gary, to be satisfied with that result. Keep in mind, all four of those competitors want main events anytime SICW opens its doors. And our classic stars, DiBiase, Volkoff, and Brody, all were main event superstars in St. Louis. It's that combination of new and old that has made SICW so special in wrestling today.